Good evening everybody, and it's time for another kit review and a bit of history. This time I'm going to be looking at the Tornado and a bit of the Gulf War, which made the aeroplane famous. So let's have a look at this. My dad actually got me this book many years ago when I was a kid. I remember watching the Gulf War with him on the news. He was absolutely fascinated by the Tomahawk missile turning left at the traffic lights. At the time, I desperately wanted to join the RAF. I was only about 9. I did in fact go for the RAF selection. I went to the officer and aircrew selection process when it was about 20 years ago now. I jumped in my Maestro and drove to that selection test, which was in Lincolnshire at RAF Cranwell. I passed all of the tests, but I failed the final medical because they discovered that I was an asthmatic, which basically nixed my dreams of joining the RAF. But oh well, I ended up forging a career with British Telecom instead. So this book is full of colour pictures, and it basically tells the story of the RAF's involvement in the Gulf. I remember reading this book cover to cover many times as a kid. I actually built a Tornado kit. There was a magazine you might remember called Takeoff back in about 92, 93 I think it was. It came out. And the first 10 issues came out with various parts of a model kit to build up a Tornado GR1. I think it was based on an Airfix kit, and I can remember building that with my dad, and that was a really good little kit actually. So let's have a look at this Tornado F3. There were two versions of the Tornado, the GR and the F. The GR came first. It was based on the ADS-V, which was first flown in 1974, and the Tornado went into service first with the RAF in 1982, replacing the Vulcan. In fact, the Vulcan was about to be retired. It went off to do the Black Belt missions in the Falklands War around about the same time as the Tornado started to come into service at Waddington. So let's have a look at this kit. And this kit's still sealed in its bag. So this is the F3 version, this is the fighter version. I have got a Tornado GR1 which I'm in the process of building right now, but it's locked away as it's still sealed. There's your placement for your decals and your paint guide. There is the decals. Good registry there. The F3 was the fighter version. It was too big really to be a fighter. It was too cumbersome, but they still did adapt it for that role. It was fairly successful, but nowhere near as successful as the bomber version. You might remember the two guys who got shot down while serving in the Gulf. Squadron Flight Lieutenant John Peters and Flight Lieutenant John Nichol. This is one of the books that they actually wrote. This is not their first book, this is their second book. I actually met John Nichol at an air show many moons ago, and here is Tornado Down. My copy actually has a signed insert by both gentlemen, which I treasure. This is the story of them being shot down and then being captured by the Iraqis and basically tortured for information for no good reason. It was pretty horrific. I remember them being on the news, and I can remember begging my dad, who was in the army, to go in and get them, and he said, "Oh kid, I can't, I'm retired from the army." I said, "Why can't you go back in and get them?" And he said, "No, sorry." And he assured me that they'd get them out. And they did, and of course they must have done because they ended up writing these books. Tornado was finally retired from RAF service in 2019. I still think it's a fabulous aeroplane. And let's have a look at some other books that I've got. So John Nichol again wrote a full military history of the Tornado. This is an excellent book. It's along the lines of Vulcan 607. But this is actually written by one of the gentlemen who actually flew in this thing. So that's a really good book, which I can totally recommend. And then I've got this book, which is basically lots of pictures, but it's really interesting to read. There's little bits of technical information. I don't have one of those history books that goes into the history and the different marks and so forth. For anybody who's interested, I was actually going to be in an intelligence role, flying around in Nimrods. I passed all the selection tests, I passed the fitness test, everything. It literally got to the final medical and they said, sorry, but you are an asthmatic, and they actually did the old check-up on me. Yeah. Anybody who's interested in a tornado and wants to see one, there are a couple at the Yorkshire Air Museum on display. One's an F3 and one is a GR1. And just finally, there is this 1/48 scale GR1 tornado, and you can do this in the desert colour scheme, desert pink. And if you are interested in the tornado in any way, shape or form, then it is worth checking out. It was designed and built as a concern between Britain, Italy and Germany, and was powered by 2 Rolls-Royce engines. And anybody who ever flew this aeroplane says it was absolutely fantastic to fly. There is a great interview with several people who have been involved with this on a channel called Aircrew Interview, so if you want to check it out, by all means. But yeah, not so much a kit review, although. So this is the 1/48 scale kit. Again, excellent decals, not yellowed at all, they are ready to use. Instructions are in all kinds of different languages. This basic folds out into a big poster. Again, there is your different variants and your construction assemblies. My dream was to actually fly the Tornado and be a pilot myself. My dad told me, you need to be an officer to do that, which means you need A-levels at the very least. I can remember exactly where I was. I saw a Tornado in flight. It was in Skegness. I was standing by the cinema on Lumley Road, and one flew over the clock tower and down the street heading towards Coningsby, I assume, or Waddington, and that instantly hooked me for life. So this builds up the fuselage. Fuselage comes in top and bottom halves rather than side to sides. Clear parts appear to be loose. There's the nose cone. A bit of radar. There's the upper rear surface, and this is where your air brakes would sit. This is an Taglieri kit, and they're really, really good. They're better than Airfix kits, I think. Here's your wing assemblies with the swing wings, both sides of the rear stabiliser. There is the canopy. There's the pilot's cockpit windows. Some really, really good detail on this. This is all inlaid parts rather than raised panel lines. There's the cockpit tub, front and rear seats, fuel tanks. There are your missiles that go on the underside. There's your rear engine nacelles, and the underside where the landing gear is. Yeah, a really, really nice little kit by the look at that. So yeah, if you want to check out the Tornado, by all means, there's plenty of stuff out there on YouTube, and it is a lovely, lovely aeroplane to look at and to hear. To hear it is like nothing that I've ever encountered before or since. And I've seen things like F-15s and F-18s in flight. Alright, well, thanks very much for tuning in. Ta-da.